Hey everybody, just wanted to give a quick update. There were some audio and visual issues with this video when we were recording it, but please stick around. They do clear up after the first few minutes, and there are some really useful insights from both Alex and Isaiah in the video. So yeah, apologies for the kind of awkward audio and visual for the first few minutes. Like I say, it does get better, and it's really worth sticking around for some very useful bits of knowledge from these guys. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Sorry about that, and yeah, enjoy.
Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. We are getting into regionals, and we've already had some Brisbane results. We've had a ton of online results as well coming in recently, and the first American regional is finally returning, Salt Lake City, just this weekend. So I've got two experts on today who have been storming not only IRL events for many years, but also have been at the forefront of some big online tournaments as well. So we should be getting a lot of good information from both of our panelists today, as we are going to dissect the results from Brisbane and look at how that's going to adapt the Salt Lake meta. So let's jump into this discussion. First of all, a quick introduction for both of you. Let's start with Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Schemanske. I've been playing for 12 years at this point. I won Players Cup 4 and the 25th Anniversary Invitational. I've had a lot of regionals and IFC finishes, but yeah, I'm excited for the format coming up.
Awesome. And Isaiah?
Yeah, what's up everyone? I'm Isaiah Bradner. I won the 2020 POG Championships, which was kind of a stand-in for the unofficial Worlds that year. And I've been playing for, I guess it's 7 years now. I had my first year in Masters, just started before the pandemic. I got top 8 at Knoxville Regionals and top 4 at Salt Lake City, at Atlantic City at that time. All right, sorry, had a brother pop in for a second. But yeah, I did those things, so I'm excited for this year to continue. I cannot wait to get back to playing Pokemon again.
Yeah, I think that's universal. So let's start off just with, to no one's surprise, Mew Genesect winning. I think potentially some eyebrows raised by the list brought to us by Natalie, really just showing the power of double turbo energy coming from the latest set and just going maximum consistency, but actually sacrificing stadiums, which for the longest time, 3 seemed to be the lowest count for most people, but she dared to go down to 2. Does that change your thought process of Mew? How close were you to Natalie's list at the time in testing? Were you heavily focused on double turbos yourselves? Were you trying out Fog Crystal? Do you still like any basic energy? Let's have your thoughts, Alex, first of all, on Mew and sort of what you felt about the build going forward.
Sure. The double turbo build is way better in my opinion. If you're playing basic energy in Salt Lake City, you're doing it wrong. We were kind of close to it. Like, we were cutting crystals. We hadn't gone full DT yet, but
Okay.
like, it wasn't too much of a surprise to see it do well.
Sure.
Two stadiums, I'm still not comfortable with.
Yeah, I feel like most people will play 59 card Natalie's and just squeeze in their favorite stadium. Is that pretty much fair to say, Isaiah?
Yeah.
You're good, Alex. Yeah, I actually talked to Natalie a good bit, and I know that their thought process or their group's thought process was our season plan was only playing 2 path leading into that event. It was pretty universal that 2 path was the number in that deck for whatever reason. So they responded by saying we can only play 2 stadiums and we can be fine against it, and it worked out. But now, obviously, seeing those 2 stadiums, people are going to capitalize, and so I know going forward that the Australians would definitely put at least a 3rd stadium in their list. I actually still like playing some Fog Crystal. I still play 1 basic Psychic and 2 Fog Crystal on my list just because I think that Fog Crystal is an amazing card. I think it smooths out your opening hands a lot more than Rotom Phone or Chromatic do. I think it's more consistent filling up your board, and the 1 basic Psychic is nice. I do think that going heavier on double turbo is good, but I like the consistency that Fog Crystal provides. So that's where I'm at with my list in respect to Natalie's.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that Psychic Energy is almost like a damage modifier. You see it almost sometimes, like into single prize matchups, especially. Like having to triple to like Power Tablet and Malamar feels like really bad just to do a Psychic Leap. So I think it's actually not too wrong to play 1 and 2 Fog, like you said, but I think that's probably going to be the maximum going ahead.
Yeah, you definitely want more double turbo, and you don't need that.
2 feels like a minimum for me now for double turbo for me as well. And then Arceus, the sort of challenger to Mew, by the looks of things, it seems to be a 2-horse race for sort of strongest deck and collection of decks, because Arceus can come in many forms. So it was actually the Duraludon build, which placed 2nd in Brisbane, What do you feel about that archetype? It sort of felt like, with the rise of the Inteleon straight build with all these Sharons, that Duraludon was maybe in a awkward meta placement. But is that sort of unfair on Duraludon? Do you still feel like it's possibly the strongest build, Alex?
I wouldn't play Duraludon at this point. I think the Echoing Horn in the Mew list is just a little too oppressive for it. You could play it. You could get lucky. But I don't know. It's not the strongest Arceus build anymore, for sure.
Do you echo that, Isaiah? What do you think about the Duraludon build?
Yeah, I know that it got really lucky to beat Kaiwen in top 4, who was playing the same list as Natalie. They got really lucky to beat the Echoing Horn. I don't think you are going to beat Echoing Horn. I think that Echoing Horn should be in every single Mew list because that card is broken. Not only against Arceus Duraludon, it's insane versus other Arceus decks. It can win you games in, 2 prize matchups or 1 prize matchups if they play the 1/2 prizer. So, I think that that's a problem for Arceus Duraludon. And I loved Arceus Duraludon. I was heavily considering it for Salt Lake City until the Horn became super popular and the deck is just kind of unviable. Its other matchups also aren't great. Like, I think that your Arceus and Inteleon matchup is fine. But yeah, I don't think it should be played very much this weekend. I don't think it's the best list for Arceus at all.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's a good response to Echoing Horn either. Like, you're never going to draw enough cards to play, like, Rod or anything like that. It just doesn't make any sense. And, like, just adding in extra big charms just to, like, try and make your basics tankier just doesn't seem correct. So it does feel like it's a sinking ship, the Duraludon. For what it's worth, I still think it's, like, probably the best deck that you can give a new player to have a good chance to go deep, or a player who hasn't put much time into the format. You can give them the step-by-step guide of how to play this deck pretty quickly. And I feel like it could still perform in their hands, which is to say that it takes minimal decisions to like build a board state and be dangerous, which is something going for Duraludon. But what's the sort of new wave of the Inteleon build? How have you guys been finding it? I think basically, from my perspective, the early game feels shaky, but you have, in air quotes, answers to like everything. I think a lot of people are leaning towards it, and its early win percentage is really high. Do you feel like this is probably the second best deck in the game right now? What do you think, Isaiah?
I hate the deck. I think the deck is awful. I have probably played more. I was playing this deck for like 2 weeks before it did well in Limitless events. Like a deck, like pretty much like it's just Arceus, just Inteleon. I just can't find a way to make it good enough. Like the problem is, like you said, the early game is shaky, and you cannot have anything near a shaky gameplay if you want to match up against Mew. Like, if the deck goes second, it loses to Mew. It just cannot come back. And if the deck goes first, it's still in a bad spot against Mew. Like, the deck has to draw well to get 3 basics on board and an attachment to Arceus, which is what you need to not get nuked by Meloetta. And even if you get that, then Mew can set up double Mew with Fusion Energy, bench Oricorio. They can't kill your Mews. The next turn, they just blast you out of there with a Melodious Echo for 280 damage. So, I do not think the deck is very good. I think it's inconsistent, and I don't think that it beats Mew. So I do think that Arceus is like the second best deck in format somehow. I just have no idea what it is, and I don't think it's the Arceus or Inteleon.
What are your thoughts on it, Alex?
Honestly, pretty much the same thing as Isaiah. Every single time I play this deck, I just don't draw cards. Like, I just lose. It's awful. Arceus is definitely the second best deck in format. I've been trying stupid partners out all of week. Like, I played Lycanroc VMAX this morning.
Wow,
so there was that. Yeah, the deck is just... It only beats Mew when they path Marnie, and it works.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only time it wins.
Just...
Do that, and yeah, I'm same thing, Alex. I mean, I'm sure we've both been trying an insane amount of Arceus decks. If you like could look back at our testing, same thing. But yeah, I just there was one other thing. Oh yeah, I don't really personally understand how it beats Mew in these online events. Like, it has a favorable match against Mew. I guess that Mew is kind of a hard deck to play, but I still don't really understand how it beats Mew in these online events.
Yeah, it could be just like the new deck on the block thing, where there's enough new players not knowing the step-by-step turn 1, turn 2 that you described, Isaiah, as one option. And also, the Echoing Horn is sort of a new thing as well, which is also, as you said, very good against all Arceus players. So that'll be interesting. What do you think, actually? Because Mitch got top 8 playing this deck with a Judge. Do you feel like Judge is the counter to Rotom Phone to give you that little bit of extra percentage points? Do you expect Judge to be a card played in Inteleon path decks. Like even Jolteon could be jumping on that bandwagon now. Do you think that gives you bonus percentages, or do you just feel like at the end of the day it comes down to a cram hitting heads or tails? What are your thoughts on the Judge? Either of you?
I've been playing like one Judge instead of like one Marnie in a lot of my lists recently, just because it has the Rotom Phone factor, and like it also just the shuffle draw sometimes is better.
Okay.
It's not like you're not going to replace all your Marnies. That's not happening. But Judge is still a card that is decent.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Fair enough.
I'll follow up on that. I think that one Judge is probably fine. I haven't like touched it very extensively because I don't think it will change much against Mew. I think that it's still the same thing. It definitely does. Stopping Rotom Phone is good, especially if it's, there are going to be people that copy card for card the 2-path list or the 2-stadium list for Mew, right? And especially against that, going Judge is going to be impactful. But at the same time, like their list only had 2 stadiums. It's pretty small likelihood that they're going to phone the stadium on top. So yeah, Judge is a good card. It should be in your deck if you want to play the deck, but I don't think it actually gives it any extra percentage points realistically in the matchup. I still think it's pretty unfavored versus Mew.
That's fair. So with those probably being like the 2 most popular Arceus decks, I think also the sort of Dark Arceus is sort of popping up as well. Do you feel like Dark Arceus is going to be the next most popular? Do you feel like there's any like more sort of new Arceus decks or untested ones? I know there's been some like Arceus Malamar VMAX coming around. What would you say is like your next favorite Arceus deck that we haven't discussed so far, Alex? Or are they all just untouchable because Mew is too strong?
The ones that we haven't discussed, it's probably Malamar VMAX.
Sure.
But its Arceus and Teleon matchup is just a little too shaky for it to be like the play.
That's fair. Mazai, do you have any other pet Arceus builds?
No idea. I don't know. I've played a bunch of different Arceus decks, like I said, but I don't have one that comes up as that I think will actually show up. I think that it'll be those 2 decks will show up. I think the next popular one will probably be the weird one with Dark Energy and Water Energy in it.
Sure.
Which I don't really understand why I played Water Energy, but the Dark Energy, I think Dark Arceus will be the next most popular deck. I think that will be the...
Sure. And you feel like it's going to be like the little splash of the Clara and the 1 prize Moltres, and maybe like 1 Galarian Moltres V? Or do you feel like it's going to lean more towards what we've seen about Hooper Moltres, where you're playing like a 2-2 Arceus in an Inteleon-based build that still plays like the Coco, the Hooper, the Moltres? Which is your like preference out of those, Isaiah?
That the first one is better because that deck can attach an energy to Arceus and then use Arceus on turn 2 like every game, and I think it's gonna be better than whatever Hoopa Moltres can do. I think that the dark deck with just like straight dark stuff, energy Moltres, Galarian Moltres and energy switch instead of playing water and Melanie, that makes a lot more sense to me. I think that deck is fine. I think it's a pretty good deck. So I think that deck is definitely better than the Hoopa deck.
Fair. Would you agree, Alex?
Yeah, I don't like the whole Moltres Hoopa game. It's just bad against Mew if they're good players. So it's not worth it.
Fair enough. That does also sort of lead me on to a discussion that I really want to talk specifically with you, Alex, about, and that's you did a long sort of tweet thread about single prize attacking decks in general and coming away from online format to a timed, best of 3. I believe you were mostly interested in Rapid Strike Malamar, and I'd like to hear your thoughts still on Rapid Strike Malamar specifically, but in general, like, what would you say is advice or like concern about playing single prize attacking decks into a timed meta, especially because there could be, 30% of the field could be brand new players going into Salt Lake.
I'm going to say something real quickly. Alex, I had the same reaction as you did. I was like, what tweet is he talking about? And then he finished it out with the time thing, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what it was.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm still a little scared to play a bunch of 1-prizers. Like, the whole meta shifting towards Mew and Arceus and Teleon, I think is a good thing for 1-prizers. You're less likely to hit mirrors and play like 1.5 games in 50 minutes. And the Mew matchup should, unless you're playing Hoopa Moltres, because that deck's bad, it should take less time than you would need. Like, you're not probably going to time that often against Mew. So, it's less of a problem now. Malamar it's still a good deck. I know a couple of good players have been still playing it. Like Tord played it this weekend. The good version in Teleon, thank you. It's still a real deck. I just don't know how many people are bringing it to a regional when RC Centellion's a close matchup, and then Mew is, do they play Oricorio and you whiff something and you lose? Like, I just don't know if I'd bring almost any one price deck right now.
Fair. As I do also think Intellion's the best way to go. And what do you think about the deck?
Oh yeah, and like okay, so I thought that Cincina was better at first because it just made more sense to me. Like you could Cynthia, then you could make do and build your hand, and then I played the Intellion version, and like that deck has the Mandate of Heaven. That deck is insane. That deck has some crazy things it can do. So yeah, that deck is definitely the one you want to be playing if you're playing Malamar. I also want to say one thing to the time point is that almost all the one price decks in format are going to lose the game they lose in like a minute. So if you're worried about time, that's something to take into consideration. I still don't think that they're really strong enough. I think that Mew makes the game extremely difficult, almost impossible for a lot of them to win if played perfectly by Mew. So they're probably not worth considering, but they're fine decks. You can consider them. I probably wouldn't bring them, but the reasoning would not be because of time for me personally.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I'm glad you both like the Intellion build because it feels like that one you just have way more control over all your turns.
Cool.
So
it feels like you're cheating the entire game. Like, you just get your cards.
Close.
I'm glad. I was genuinely upset when I started seeing Cincino like popping up because it feels like it can be like that 10 out of 10, but it could also be like the 2 out of 10. Whereas the Rapid Mali with the Intellion can feel like that. It can still have those like highlight reel turns where it pops off, but it's like the floor is so much higher, I think.
Keep calling. Like,
yeah, that's it,
it's
right?
so much better.
Yeah, I agree. So if we're not going for single prize attacking decks and we don't think they're strong enough into Mew, what do we think about some of these dark decks? Gengar being like the second most played deck on Play Limitless right now. Do we feel like it's the best deck to target Mew with? Or do you think its, own inconsistencies are enough of a turn off to play Gengar for this event? What do you think, Isaiah?
The best deck to target Mew, for sure. It is the deck that will win you the most games against Mew, I think, at least that I've tested. So I would not bring it because while I think it'll win you the most games against Mew, I don't think it's more than like a 60-40 probably. So I think that Mew's going to still steal a good amount of games off of you. Yeah, I think it is probably the best deck that we have to target Mew. But I do think that it's inconsistent, and because it's the regionals, you're going to hit a lot of other decks. You're going to hit RCS decks which aren't as good a matchup. So the deck's fine, but for those reasons, I wouldn't consider it. But it does have a good Mew matchup.
Do you agree, Alex? Do you think it's something worth taking? I feel like it could be a deck that like makes day 2, but I feel like you just don't hit enough Mew Genesects to like actually go very deep in an event.
You also can go second against Mew and then still lose. So
yeah, I mean, there's always that factor, right? You're still banking on Path, even though you're a dark deck. You just punish like faster than like Jolteon, for example, I guess.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think there's a reason Gengar has one of the lowest win percentages on Limitless. Like, the deck is so bad when it's bad. Like, when it works is great. If it worked every time, it's the BDIF. Like, but it doesn't, and I think it really shows. I personally have like a very favored win percentage against it with Mew. It's just like if I hit the turn 1 knockout, I'm probably winning that game unless I play poorly. Mm-hmm. So, I also don't think you'll ever win the event. And if your goal is to win, you shouldn't be bringing Gengar.
I tend to agree because even in the good matchups, you can just be your own worst enemy.
Just drop ass.
So the Metafy regional was won by Jolteon. Surprising to a lot, but it looks like no one's respecting Jolteon enough to play Manaphy. Do you think that'll still be the case at Salt Lake? And do you believe Jolteon to be like a strong deck? I know there's sort of contention around the matchups that they actually faced and how strong of a Mew matchup has it had. We've seen from the pre-Brilliant Stars format, it was sort of that contender to Genesect. It was pretty solidly like the second best deck. Do you feel like it's up and coming, or do you still feel like it's going to be this like 5% of the meta? Is it even worth caring about this sort of archetype? What do you think, Alex?
I think 5% of Salt Lake would be actually really big for it. I think there is also a reason every event Jolteon's done well, there's been 1 in cut and then like 10 X and Force. Like you need the matchups, and you need the matchups to brick against you. Like its whole claim to fame is Marnie Path, and I think Arceus Inteleon almost does that better at this point.
Interesting.
Like,
Do you feel the same way as I? Oh, sorry, Alex. Carry on. Finish your thought.
Like, I'm gonna respect it a bit, but I'm not basing my call on Jolteon. Like,
Sure.
Okay, so you know how I said that I hated Arceus Inteleon? Well, I think that this deck is the worst deck in format by like leaps and bounds. I literally cannot fathom the fact that this deck won the Metafy regionals. Like whenever I was paying attention to Brisbane, I was testing, and then I looked at it and I was like, wait, what? Like, how did this guy win? And he only faced 4 Mews, but still, like, I don't know. I think the deck is awful. I do not think you should respect it going into Salt Lake City. I don't think that anyone should play it into Salt Lake City. I think the Mew matchup is horrendous. And so I would not. Like Alex said, Arceus Inteleon is pretty much just a better Jolteon in almost all respects. I think the deck is a lot better than Jolteon. Yeah, I think Jolteon is a really bad deck. I would not encourage anyone to play it, and I will not be respecting it.
Fair. Do you feel like it? Well, it clearly must have at least a few decent Arceus matchups. It feels like if you can deny their like sobbles, they're gonna have a bad time. I still am kind of baffled myself because they're both playing a lot of healing cards. Does Jolteon have to play like multiple Cheryl to actually secure an Arceus matchup if you are someone playing Jolteon, or do you just jam the list that you saw at Metafy? Or do you think it's hopeless anyway?
I would definitely play multiple Cheryl because like your chance has to be playing Arceus decks, right? And I also think that why it did so well is Arceus decks they've gotten better recently, but like the lists that do well, they lose to Path. Like their deck needs Starbirth to set up. And so if Jolteon paths you and then knocks out your Sobble, like you're in a world of hurt. So they've been playing Pumpkaboo or Rose Tower to kind of help that, which is good because it's not as bad. But I think that's why it's been doing well against Arceus. I do think that it doesn't have that good an Arceus matchup. Whenever I tested it, I was losing to Arceus because Arceus was a 2-prizer. That was pretty much the only reason. And it was pretty easy to stagger Arceus. You don't need to play it for a few turns. You can bench it, Sharon's Care. But I think that's why it's doing well against Arceus because the deck plays like 2 supporter cards. And when you put Path in play, they die.
Sure. Makes sense. So one of the other like more popular decks is another Inteleon build, but this time with Ice Rider. I feel like it had early popularity, but I feel like the format's moving beyond this sort of deck. Do you feel like it's just an Arceus Punisher? That kind of what it feels. It's what it feels like to me more than anything else. But even then, they're having to play like Tool Scrappers and stuff like that to even keep up with Arceus now. Is there a compelling reason to play this, or is it just another worse Path deck than an Arceus Inteleon, Alex?
I mean, it's an okay deck. It feels worse than half the format, and it needs too much. Like, if you want to one-shot Mew, you have to play Leon, which is just like you only do that once a game, and it's kind of bad. So it just doesn't seem good to me. I'd rather play like any other Arceus deck.
Azar?
Yeah, no further comment. I don't like this deck either. I think it's bad. So
all right. So I think we're going to go sort of full circle because I am gathering that you're both respecting Mew Genesect as being like the strongest deck. From Natalie's list, we've mentioned stadiums and maybe tinkering with like one of the energies. What's your way to get an edge in Mirror now that Natalie's brought us basically the most consistent list possible? Do you have any tech cards, or are you just hoping that you can outplay opponents? What's your main priority? If you were to be playing Mew Genesect, would you make any mirror techs, or do you feel like this is what it is and you just have to play your game as best you can in the mirror? Because there are things you can do. You both know what you're going to try and do. So there's a ton of drawing that both players have to do to hit, either their gust outs or their like quad tablet turn outs. Do you feel like there's enough randomness in the mirror that you can just try and play your best and get over the line, or are you going to make any other changes? Isaiah, what do you think?
Know what you would play if you wanted to counter mirror? I guess that you could say like Pokemon Catcher gives you the chance to do it.
That's the cheeky one, right? Yeah, there's murmurs of Catcher, the sort of copium. I can flip more heads than you.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think there's a ton you can do. I think the most important thing to do if you want to play Mew is just play a ton of mirror matches because I do think there's a good amount of skill in identifying what your opponent has used, when you should use Meloetta, when you should leap, etc., etc. So that's the best thing that I would do. I guess just going with what you said, I would try to play better than my opponent in the mirror because I'm not really sure what there would be to tech into my Mew deck. Last format, Fan was really good, but Double Turbo Energy pretty much alleviates that for this format.
Yeah, I agree. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same. At this point, Mew Mirror is it mostly comes down to whoever takes the first KO, but if if your opponent is bad and like throws away power tablets, sure, you have a shot. Like, it's just like the mirror is dumb at this point. I mean, the better player will probably win more often, but I wouldn't bank on it like every time.
Yeah, I actually think the triple double turbo makes it even more complex because you have to really save all of, like, you need the 5 mods, right, to KO an Oricorio with your own double turbo. So it really spices up, or like can clog up your own hand if you're on that game plan. So that could even be a reason to sort of go back to 1 psychic energy to give yourself the option to have a quad turn rather than a all 5 mods turn, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, great conversation so far, guys. Are there any other decks that you feel compelled to talk about? There's one more actually that I wanted to mention, going back to the sort of Hooper Malt deck. We mentioned how Arceus could be going in, but there's recently been a couple big wins for a Donphan package going into this deck. Is this like complete memes? This basically like overtakes the Wheezing, right? Those are the slots that you're putting it in for. Do you think this is the complete meme, or do you think this is maybe a decent combination of Fighting and Dark, which over and over again people have tried to use as the formula for this format? What do you think, Alex?
Oh, so I spent hours on this yesterday.
Yes.
It was so bad. Like, it just loses. Like, Donphan seems really good in theory, and then you hit your own bench 3 times, and then they say 1 ping and you lose. Like, against Mew, we got to the point where I was using Oricorio to take a prize.
Yeah.
And like,
absolutely.
it's just like, that doesn't do anything. And like, Psychic Leap, again, okay. It just, I hate the deck. It's so bad.
So I feel like a couple more people than just there was one Canadian player who won 2 events with it, right?
Yeah.
And had very respectable records. But I think with a few more people, raising their eyebrow, giving it a go, it's not had great win rates. Isaiah, would you say something similar?
So this is the time I'm hearing of this deck. But if Alex says it's bad, then I'm gonna go with Alex.
That's fair. All right, let's jump to any other decks that you guys feel worth mentioning at this point that we haven't touched on.
Let me open my TCG out and see what I
have. Just while we're on that, does that make you guys feel like in a day 1 scenario you're only going to run into like maybe 5 or 6 decks and maybe multiples of Arceus and Mew? Does that feel like a fair assessment of what you're expecting day 1?
Yeah, I think that 5 might be a little bit high. Maybe I'm getting too into my head, but I think that I would like 4 would be the number that I'd be thinking. You'll definitely hit Mew. You'll probably hit 2 different. Well, I think you'll hit Mew. You'll hit Arceus and Teleon. There can be a category of Arceus other, and then you'll hit like 1 deck that's not Mew or Arceus. That's what I think will happen. Maybe there'd be different stuff, but that's what I would expect.
Mm-hmm. Did you say something similar, Alex?
Yeah. I mean, I'm making a bold prediction that Mew is gonna be like a record high meta share at Salt Lake, just because like it's the best deck.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing beats it consistently.
Yeah.
So like, you could just easily see 30% Mew in Salt Lake at least.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that I think it was the Metafy that had like one of the highest percentages compared to other online events, and that just shows that like when there's actual prizing on the line, people want to play Mew because they think it gives them the best chance, and the meta is already entirely warped around Genesect Mew. So what fear do you have at this point? You out consistency stuff. I think the win percentage is so deceptive on Play Limitless of how low Mew Genesect is.
Yeah,
because of the masses, right?
I was talking about this yesterday. Like the win percentage of a deck overall and then the conversion rate of a deck overall are such bad ways to look at decks whenever you have a deck that's a 4th of the field, because of what you said. The masses are going to bring down the bottom tier of it, and also if there's more of a deck, then it's going to hit itself more, so of course it's going to have a lower win rate if it's like more of the field. So I 100% agree with you that the win rate, you can look, it's only got like a 45% win rate. Well, it's not actually true. Like, that's true, but it's not a good descriptor of how good the deck is.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. So Mew sounding very strong. Let me hear your 2 top picks for the event. Just rattle them off. Don't need too much explanation. Maybe a little quick insight if if it is going to be Mew as one of those top 2, I imagine most people have that in their top 2. Would you be, how far away from Natalie's list would you be for those? And just a quick rundown, like, for example, if it was Gengar, are you playing Barrel, are you playing this, that, and the other? If you're playing Duraludon, are you playing any, like, tech cards, stuff like that? What's your top 2 picks right now, guys? Alex?
I mean, it's obviously Mew is probably the top pick. It just has to be. I think I'm probably 2 or 3 cards off Natalie's list at this point. One's definitely a Stadium, and then what was it? There was something else we changed that I thought was like potentially worth it. Stadium, just we're doing Old Cemetery for now. It's just there's some math that helps. It's the only stadium that matters of all. Stadiums are terrible in this format.
At least it can offset some double turbo numbers.
Right.
That's like the upside of it, right? If it comes off. Nice.
And then my second pick, I mean, there's probably no defined second pick yet.
Okay.
It's Arceus Plus.
Okay. Fair enough. And Isaiah, what about you?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I'm going to be playing Mew VMAX with 4 Mew V in it, in case anyone was wondering if
that's always a cut, right?
or 3 Mew V in my deck. There will be 4 Mew V. I also think that I'll probably rock up with 4 Stadiums because I am not trying to lose to Path, and I think that that's like the only way that I will lose to a lot of the Arceus decks that I'll play against. So I'd probably be rocking 4 Path, and I actually like the 1 basic Psychic, like I said. So I would probably, at least right now, I could definitely go back to Double Turbo. I'm not definitive, but yeah, I'm playing 1 basic Psychic, 4 Stadiums right now, so a little bit off Natalie's list.
Yeah, interesting. And you're literally just locking in. You're saying there's no reason to play anything else, no temptations at this point.
I mean, my second deck would be something Arceus. Honestly, at this point, I've spent like so many weeks trying to find an Arceus deck that beats Mew and haven't found it. And I found some decks that when I built it up, I was like, oh yeah, this is the one. And then it didn't happen. So I think that my mindset is kind of, if I couldn't find a deck that consistently beats it, then I doubt that someone else is going to find a deck that will consistently beat me. So that's what I'd be thinking, at least for bringing Mew in.
That's super fair, because I know there's that weird shadow that everyone's thinking that, like, where's the, like when DDG were a team, where's the hidden deck that comes out and just surprises everyone? But it feels like Mew keeps every deck so honest in every way that, like, even the stuff you build with all the techs, they still need to draw well, because Mew just puts them on the clock so nicely with its variety of attackers if you're playing it correctly. So yeah, I agree. I think there won't be a secret deck realistically. I think it's so hard, or they have to run so well.
I think it will exist. It will definitely be at the tournament. I just don't think it's going to do very well. Like, there will definitely be people who bring a deck that people don't think is going, like, people don't expect. I just don't expect it to win the event. Maybe it'll get day 2, top 16, but I don't think that it'll actually win the event, especially once it gets into day 2 and Mew players know it exists. They have the night before to talk and find out how to beat it, and then it's going to be so much harder for you going into day 2.
Yeah, it basically involves the timing of when you're leaping, right? More or less, like it's usually the thing you need to figure out.
Attacking with Oricorios, when you can attack with Meloetta, like against Dark, it's really bad to attack with Meloetta early because it gives up prize cards. Like you just attack with Max Miracle twice. So just finding out stuff like that. Yeah,
nice. All right, I think we've covered everything I wanted to. So thanks so much for coming on. Do you want to give your shout outs or sponsors or anything like that? Now's the time, Alex.
I guess at this point, shout out to Channel Fireball. I'm a writer there. Check out my articles. I think they're free right now. And shout out to Josh Frank for testing with me, and Christopher too, because we still test apparently.
That's awesome.
Is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna say sending shout out to Channel Fireball. I write articles there, I do videos there, so check them out. They have free articles from me and Alex is pretty insane. So there's some great stuff on there. And then shout out to the boys for testing. I don't have much else.
Nice one. Well, I wish you both the best of luck. We had the winner on our last interview, so hopefully we can keep that trend going.
Let's go.
It would be a good omen. Thanks so much, guys, for hopping on today and
thank you.
hearing
Really
your thoughts.
appreciate it.